Well, hello YouTube, I'm Ross, and today we're going to look at the 1955. Will it run? I hate to disappoint you, but the answer is no. I got this tractor probably 3 or 4 years ago by now. I had tried to buy it for, probably about 8 or 10 years, and the guy didn't want to sell it. I saw it sitting alongside the road during a tractor drive at a shop to be worked on, and I got a hold of the owner and he didn't want to sell it yet. And so finally, just a few years ago, he called me and he said, I think I'm ready to sell it. So I went to look at it, and I walked up over here to the engine oil, and when I pulled it out, antifreeze started gushing out at me. And so that's a sad story. That usually means that your motor is junk, and I'm pretty sure that this one is. What I've done is I have filled it full of diesel fuel to try to help loosen some stuff up, and I've kept up on that. So I thought it would be probably a good time to get started and just see how bad this is going to be. Well, we looked at the engine oil. I know I told you I put diesel fuel in there, so let's see what the hydraulic shift looks like. And it is dry, so it's hard to say what's going on in there. The guy that was working on it and kind of gave up on it told me that when he had it running, he thought it sounded like something was getting tight. And at this point, it's hard to say what that is. That could have been a failure in the hydraulic shift because it's dry. It could have been this motor locking up. Who knows? We'll have to tear it apart and see what it looks like, but I'm fairly certain it's going to be pretty nasty in there. So this will be an ongoing series in this whole ordeal because it's going to take a while. The 55 series came out in 1969, and I believe that the first year in 1969, it was the 1555, 1655, and 1855. And then in 1970, the 1755 and the 1955 were added. I guess they probably had a lot of leftover 1750s and 1850s. And so by 1970, they were in full swing with all 55 series tractors. When I bought this, I'll put some pictures in ahead of time from the day that we loaded it up. The rims, I think I had both tires off of this one, at least one. The one on the other side was really bad and was pretty well flat. It wouldn't hold any air, and the rim was rotten. I had to do some patching just to be able to move it around. So we went out there and we winched it on. It had duals on it, and anyway, we got it all the way here, and then we went to unload it off of the trailer, which is it's a tilt bed Landau trailer that they had at the dealer where I worked. We had it almost all the way off, and it slid right on the edge of the trailer, and I really thought that it was probably going to roll over. I ended up climbing in the cab, and my buddy who was helping, we hooked the 1855 to it, and he pulled sideways while we let pressure off the winch so that we could try to keep it from flipping over. And I don't recommend doing that, so always be careful when you're unloading off the trailer because you never know what could happen. It's been sitting around here for, like I said, probably 3 or 4 years. I just haven't had time to get to it. It was missing these 2 pieces of sheet metal on each side, and I asked the guy, and he looked and he couldn't find them. He didn't know what happened to them, but I think why they got taken off was you can see that somebody did some creative steering line repair here, and so I'm guessing that he didn't really feel the need to put those back on, and they probably got lost or thrown into the scrap. So the 1955 has the 310 turbo diesel that is hated by many, but I like them. I mean, I like the way they sound, and if you rebuild them right, they work great. And the big difference, if you don't know, between like the 1855 and the 1955 is the 1955s had this oil cooler made into the block here, and the 1855 and 1755 did not have that. They don't even have the casting for it. I have heard of a few 1750s, some 1750s that had the casting for the oil cooler, but they didn't have the guts in the oil cooler, and they were supposedly like reject 1950 T blocks. And anyway, I've heard of guys putting the stuff in them, and now they've got the oil cooled block. So I don't know what was the reason for the reject. I just remember hearing about that. And it's a good idea to have some way to cool your oil when you've got a turbocharger, and then on top of it you've got guys who turn the screw way up and get way more power than what it was rated at. And that was where I think the fatal blow came into a lot of the 1855s. My 1855 has an aftermarket cooler on it that converts it to a spin-on filter, and that's kind of nice. It seems to cut down on the temperature of the oil and everything, and I can put a picture in of what that looks like. I don't really know if you can get those anymore. I think they used them on John Deere tractors too. I don't know what model, but you're going to probably need the centerpiece that screws it down in there and changes over the threads to the spin-on. So I don't know if you can get that or not. I've seen them on eBay, but it looks like it's just the filter itself, the filter base. So I haven't really done much of anything, like I said, in the 3 or 4 years I've had it. I had this suitcase weight bracket and a couple suitcase weights, so I hung those on there. They need to be stored someplace, and that's just as good a place as any. And actually here a while back, I ended up putting a new steering wheel on it, because I did work on a tractor for a guy and he didn't want to buy a new steering wheel, so I sold him one off this one and put a new one on here. So you do whatever the customer wants when you do work for them. It's got a year-round cab on, which it has had supposedly since it's new. I actually found out the guy I bought it from was not the original owner. The original owner was actually my neighbor just a mile away, and they bought it, and he said it had the year-round cab on it from the day they picked it up. So I assumed that the dealer had put it on and it was sitting on the lot like this, and so that's how he bought it. I really do not like these cabs. It's just, they're noisy, hard to get into, but you know, back in the day, I'm sure that they were thrilled with it. That was probably everything they'd ever dreamed of, but it's not for me. Anyway, you can see the remnants of the sticker there from our dealer. Our dealer was the local co-op, and they sold a bunch of Oliver tractors. I'm not exaggerating when I say just about every farm had one. I mean, if you drive from my house to town as a kid, you could see an Oliver on about every farm. There was a bunch of them here. So if you look inside the cab, it's pretty nasty. And this is actually clean from what it was. I cleaned it out. It had been sitting out there at the fix-it shop with all the windows open, and so the weather kind of took its toll on everything, which is a shame, because usually when you find cab tractors, the dash and everything is in excellent shape, and this one is pretty crusty. You see up in the top, birds like to find any hole they can and stuff it full of straw in short order. And then you've got the occasional piece of sheet metal laying around that he took off for some reason and didn't put back. I see there's a hole torched in over there, I guess, to put that line. That's not the way I do it, but whatever. Here you can see this rim. It's pretty rusty. These spacer blocks here that lock your rim onto the center are about the worst I've ever seen. They're flaking off pretty bad. I'm probably gonna have to get 5 or 6 new ones at least. It's got the factory dual hubs so that you can mount duals right on. I've got those on the 1855 too. I put them on there, and sometimes they made a short spacer, and then they made like an 11.5-inch spacer. In my experience, the shorter one's hard to find. I don't know if that's true or just happens to be the case for me, but anytime you're looking for something, you have a hard time finding it. And I finally found a set at an auction close by, so I have a set anyway. Well, back here you can see it's missing the factory top link like most of the tractors you buy are. I'm pretty sure I have one. I'll have to check on that when we get to that point, which is a long way off. Looks like it's been leaking back here, and it's hard to tell where exactly from. It was probably leaking from between here, but it looks awfully wet down here, so who knows? Who knows what was going on? Well, let's go ahead and keep the theme up and check the hydraulic oil. And it's dry too. That's not a surprise. Well, there might be a little bit on the end of the stick, but who knows? Let's try it again and see what happens. It looks pretty dry. I think whatever was on there just splashed up when I pulled it forward up here. So a lot of times when you get a tractor, it's missing this cap that goes on here. I can't believe this one's still hanging on after all that it's been through, but it's still there, so that's good. It might have kept some of the water from getting in there. It's supposed to have well, it's got a through hole underneath, but it's probably caked with dirt, so who knows? I can feel it. So it's not going to be any secret that this cab is coming off, because like I said before, I just do not like these cabs. I've got a factory narrow row cab that I think I may put on this tractor. I don't know. I'm not a fan of cabs, but I think that narrow row cab looks neat when it's on the tractor, and it's got the little tank fenders, and that's pretty neat. Here's the narrow row cab. I need to get it picked up and put away or set it on the tractor or something, because it's been sitting up on blocks here and I'm tired of mowing around it, so I need to do something before it goes to waste. But as you can see, it's kind of a cute little cab with kind of an octagon shape and little fuel fenders, and you can set the rows in, I believe, to 30-inch rows with this cab, which you couldn't do with all of them. It's a shame that this tractor sat outside so long, because you can see that on certain parts of it, it really would have shined up nice. I think that these fenders are probably going to go on the 1755 that I just bought this spring, because it's got a cab on it too, and it's coming off. So I'll probably put these on there, and then either that cab that I just showed you, or I've got another set of fuel fenders I may put on them. I like fuel fenders. I think they look neat, and you can run about all day in one of these with a set of fuel fenders. Well, here we are in the cab. I cleaned it out once when it first came here, and believe it or not, it's a lot better than it was, but it looks like birds have still found their way in. It's not very sealed up around the floor, and they probably are responsible for messing a lot of this back up again. If I look at it and get you around here, it only had 3,500 hours on it, so that's less than my 1855 had when I got it. Just look at, see what kind of shape all of these are in. Like I said, usually cab tractors, the dash is immaculate, but this one is not. I've seen people ask about these warning lights, what they're supposed to do, because their stickers are wore off. On the 18 and 1955s, your top one is for your park brake, which is when you pull that handle, then that light starts to flash. On my 1855, it's got a flash bulb in it. I've you can put a solid bulb in, whatever. The next one down is an air filter restriction light. And it tells you on the air filter housing not to remove the air filter until that light comes on. And I have never waited that long. I've always changed them before that happens. So I tested the one on the 1855 the other day and put ground to it. It does still work, but it never has come on and told me I had to replace the air filter, so that's probably a good thing. The bottom one is a hydraulic oil temperature sender, and on these tractors, I don't know if I can wiggle you around, but under the seat, and you can't really see it on here, back in there is where the sender sits. On my 1755, the cab on that one is in such a terrible place, they ended up moving the sender, and I can show you that here in a little bit. Here on the 1855, I don't know if I can get you closer or not, but you can see that hydraulic oil sender I was talking about. It sits on the side of the unit just behind the platform and kind of underneath the line that feeds the hydraulics for the remotes and the 3-point hitch. Here you can see on the 1755, somebody moved that sender to this back plug because this cab, I think, was so tight they didn't want to have to fool with it, or maybe the other one went bad and they didn't want to fool with it. But anyway, that's the first one I've seen where it's back here. Maybe if you've seen that and you know why, you can say something in the comments, but that's the first one I've seen back there. All of my 55 series tractors, the key is here in the dash, and towards the very end they changed the dash a little bit and they put flares on this sheet metal, and the key was right over here to the side. From a using it standpoint, I really don't like that as well as the key in the dash, but from a working on it standpoint, that really helps, because you can't get this part of the dash pulled up unless you take the key switch and push it down, because all the wires are fed behind there and it just crowds everything up and won't let things come loose enough where you can do anything. So I can see the reason why, but like I said, to use it, I like having it up here. I guess that's just personal preference. So at quick glance here, this is even news to me. I noticed that we have 2 light switches here, and that's the first time I've seen that setup. So I don't know if somebody thought that they wanted the cab lights separate than the tractor and put in another switch. I'm not really sure on that. If you know, you can leave something in the comments, because like I said, out of all the tractors like this I've owned or worked on, I've never seen that setup before. But if you put one in, you'd have to drill, you'd have to be pretty good. It doesn't look cobbled up, because you'd have to drill the hole for the shaft of the switch, and then also this little pin locating hole that holds the switch still. So I don't really know what's going on there, but like I said, we'll have this thing all tore apart, so we'll find out what it is. Anyway, on this side you have your fuses for your lights, fuse for your instrument, and then this is your preheater button for your preheater. And then, of course, we've got our very stiff hydraulic shift lever that does not want to shift through all 3 positions, so we'll be doing something with that. And our throttle with the condition that people complain about, where when you pull the throttle it is shifting gears, so we'll have to free that up. There we go. You can, hard to do one-handed, but it's just stiff. It's not totally rusted fast, so that's good. But there's something hitting the lever on there. On my 1755, I was having trouble. I think it was putting it in low. It acted funny, and all it was on that one was the heater hose for the cab had gotten between the shifter arm and the stop bolt on the back, and it wasn't letting it squeeze all the way down. So that was a simple fix. But like I said, this one I'm sure is not going to be just a fire it up and go sort of thing. It's gonna, while it's out, it's gonna have the hydraulic shift gone through, because that would just be silly at this point. And we got our nice new steering wheel here with our center cap. I got this from Corvez, so if you need steering wheels, you can call them and they'll fix you up. This, you can get steering wheels from about anywhere, but I really like the Corvez guys. They treat me right and they send the stuff and it gets here pretty quick. So check them out if you need a steering wheel for your tractor. I should say that, you know, a lot of people don't want to spend money on something like a steering wheel or the center cap. They think, oh, cosmetic, you know, I can do without. But I just got through working on an 1855 for a guy where I had a heck of a time getting this column freed up. It had filled so full of rust that it was actually locking up his steering. And it got worse and worse till the point that it wouldn't even move. If I put all my weight on it, I could maybe pull it a ½ an inch. So that's why this is important, especially if your tractor sits out a bunch. You don't want water to follow that button down in there and just start to fill that up. You're supposed to be able to just pull the whole telescoping part out as a unit if you take this cap off. And that one, there was no doing it. I had to take the dash apart and get the column out of there. I chose to do it that way instead of pulling the fuel tank. But anyway, that center cap is important. It's not just for looks. Here you can see it's missing the battery cover, and I guess that's not a big deal. They make those reproduction. And on this side, it's missing the hydraulic cover, which is not uncommon. I think about 90% of the tractors you see don't have it. It would be kind of a pain to wiggle it in there with the cab on it right there, but it could be done. It wouldn't be that big a deal, but you wouldn't be able to get to your front bolt very good. I was lucky enough on the 1855, I found an original at a farm auction where the guy had obviously taken it off the first time he ever had to change the filter and never ever put it back on. So it had excellent original paint. So that was kind of neat to find one of those. So anyway, this is the 1955. It's a tired old horse. It's pretty rough, but pretty soon it will be back in business in the field, I hope. Like I said, most of the things I buy are in this sort of shape when they come here, so this isn't the worst I've done. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, it's part one of who knows how many part series it's going to turn into. But if you enjoy this and you want to see more Oliver and White themed videos, then make sure you like and subscribe. That helps me out, and hopefully I can keep making stuff that you'll enjoy watching. So we'll see you in the next one.